All right. Welcome, everyone, and we're really happy to be here. Thanks for the nice introduction as well. Yeah, it's us to be between you and your Feierabendbier. Don't know the English word for that, but I hope everyone understands it. So, as we're already announced, this does not work, so we tried like here, over here. My name is Wolfgang Gruhl. I'm a professor of intelligent mobility systems at the Esslingen University and head of the Fraunhofer Application Center Keim.
I'm Jonas and I work as a software developer and sound designer at Impulse Audio Lab in Munich.
Exactly. And what we try to do is we try to take a brief look into the future. And not just the future itself, but the future of cities. And of course, there is a lot of thinking about how do future cities look like. And there's also a lot of thinking about how do we move in cities of the future. And there is so many concepts, like, for example, these autonomous cars by Waymo, or these autonomous shuttle buses made by Benteler, or more futuristic shuttle buses that were created by Mercedes-Benz. And of course, there's also delivery services affected by new autonomous mobility services. We will maybe see some delivery robots, and we will get our pizza delivered by flying drones. Maybe we are able to fly with a volocopter or ride around in a city with an autonomous boat, or we will be able to use high-speed rails. So there's a lot of mobility experts thinking about how we move in the future. And most of them are purely focused on the vehicles that they are building. And very few of them are actually thinking about how will they all work together. But there are people who think about how will all these vehicles and mobility services work together. And they create pictures like this. So here we can see a lot of different vehicle types in a city of the future. And we see autonomous shuttle buses, we see autonomous cars, we see bigger buses. And in other pictures, we can actually see even some kind of flying objects and railway systems, robots as well. And we see how they all interact. And even more crazy people are thinking about how could we actually create more green cities and think about how these cities will look like if we can grow some vegetables and plants at the facades of buildings. But what we've learned about the future so far is only visual. So there are a lot of people who think about how the future looks like. But obviously, we do have more senses than just our eyes. Of course, they're super important, but we also have our nose. We have senses like smell and touch. And we have our ears. And that's the area that we want to focus on today. Because we were thinking about how does the future sound. And if you just close your eyes for a second and just ignore all the noise that you hear right now, what do you think, or how does the future sound? What do you hear?
Nothing.
Nothing, so the future is silent. Hopefully or probably?
Obviously.
Obviously.
Probably and obviously.
Probably and obviously. What could you hear?
More traffic.
More traffic? And?
No, I'm not being optimistic.
You're very pessimistic?
My city. I was thinking of my own city.
You're thinking of your own city, and there you think it's more traffic. But have you considered all the electric vehicles that might be part of your city as well? Actually, no. So if you think about vehicles like these, wait, back here. So that's the vehicles we know, and they have a combustion engine. And if you replace all of them with electric scooters, they might be more silent, right? Does it change something about your picture or about your mental idea? Yes? A little bit, maybe? And if we replace these kind of big combustion engine vehicles with these big electric vehicles, will this change something? Some people will nod. And if we replace the postman with these drones, with these delivery bots, will it change something as well? It will change, but we're not sure if it's more silent or if it's louder. And exactly that's a question that we asked ourselves. And we wanted to know, how does the city of the future really sound? Not just like closing your eyes and think about, it could be like this or like this, but we were trying to investigate how the future sounds.
Yeah, thanks for the nice introduction. We're having a tough background sound floor right now, but before I start with the project details, I want to give a little bit of an historical context. So we didn't start from scratch with our design studies. So there's a tradition of analyzing the soundscape. That's a word made up of sound and landscape that describes the sonic environment we're living in. And one guy who established it was Murray Schafer in the 1950s. And on a high-level perspective, he differentiated between lo-fi and hi-fi soundscapes. And those lo-fi soundscapes are characterized by really dense and compact sound, like high volume, high noise level, and it's really exhausting and tiring. And of course, they not even cause hearing damage, but sleep disorder and heart diseases as well. So nevertheless, I want to give you, if you remove your headphones, you kind of get an experience how a lo-fi soundscape, no kidding. But I just give you an example how lo-fi could sound like in a city. And with a long exposure of this kind of soundscape, this has a bad influence on your well-being and your health. So on the other side, we have those hi-fi soundscapes with way better quality. They help to relax, they help to focus, to concentrate. I'll just give a brief example of how this could sound. So we asked ourselves the questions, how does the city sound right now? And of course, it depends on the spot where you're looking at or where you're hearing. And so we picked out a few spots, for example, a residential area and a highway and some pedestrian zones. And we did it like the soundscape researchers. We did an analysis of the status quo. And we went out with our fancy microphone, like a 3D microphone array, to get a spatial impression of the soundscape, and then we started to analyze it. We did a quantitative analysis, so of course we measured the sound pressure level, but it was not only about sound pressure level, it was more about the quality. So how many cars, what's the sound characteristics of it? Do you hear some nature sounds, some pleasing sounds, or is it all this really tiring noise floor? And then we, especially you provided us with a lot of studies about how mobility will change in future, and we had a good estimation about how the percentage of electric vehicles, for example, will be, and then we started to redesign those scenes we recorded. So we used advanced post-production techniques to remove, for example, the combustion engine sound from our Atmo and replaced it with the sound design of electric vehicles, how we imagined they could sound. Of course, we recorded a few electric vehicles to have a reference point. So it was based on some forecasts how the mobility of the future will be, and then we redesigned our recorded Atmos. Yeah, and this was mainly studio work. I don't want to go into detail here because I could talk about audio production tools forever. If you're interested in that, we can have a chat later. I just want to come to the hearing or the listening session here, and it's getting tough and tougher. But I want to give you three examples, and the first one is a combustion engine car that's accelerating. So this is a really penetrating sound. If you're in a residential area and you have a combustion engine car that's vroom vroom going like this, I think it's a recognizable difference to an electric vehicle. So at first we hear the combustion engine. And then we try to imitate this kind of acceleration for the virtual electric vehicle. And you will notice that now you can hear some birds that were masked before because of the way, louder sound. So still some noise. It's not totally quiet, but for me at least more pleasing. Sorry. Another example. This is a residential area as well, and I just describe it in advance so you know what to concentrate or focus on. Some things will happen. We have a pedestrian that walks by. We have a postman that delivers the post, and a car driving by. We listen to the original scene. Postman. And in our redesign, we replaced the pedestrian with someone with a Segway, and the postman with a delivery drone, and the combustion engine with an electric vehicle. And the bicycle remained the same. One last example, that's a highway where the vehicles go with 60 to 80 kilometers speed. And this was, kind of the most disappointing scenario because, you can listen by yourself, but we had some listeners, they didn't got the difference because for cars, exactly. It's a lot of noise, like the noise from the tire and the wind above 50, 60 kilometers. That's the dominant part of the noise and not the combustion engine anymore. So, but nevertheless, we will hear the before and after. And with electric vehicles only. yeah, that's it with the hearing and listening examples.
So the question is, did you expect the future to sound like that? He did, sort of. We were unsure because we knew in advance that obviously the wind and the tire noises are kind of loud, but we expected it to be a little different. And most people we asked, they were like, oh, I'm really, really, really surprised that there is not so much of a difference, because I thought if the future is electric, it's also silent. But this is obviously not the case. And as we all know, the cars usually are not traveling with less than 30 kilometers per hour in a city. The noise levels will not change dramatically. And obviously, it's not going to be exactly like that, because obviously mobility behavior is going to change. So some people are talking about more traffic because people want to or need to travel more. Other people talk a lot about different and new modes. But if we just think about car manufacturers right now, they're actively working on the sound of the future. They're thinking about how can cars of the future sound like. We obviously only notice this when the cars are below 30 kilometers, but then it's legally required that they emit a sound. And also, these companies are using the sound as a marketing tool. So they will ask their customer, what do you prefer as a sound for your car? And they will create cars that sound exactly like their customers want them to sound like. And Jonas is also talking a bit about how this procedure looks like.
Yeah, sure. So at my company, we've been doing this kind of work for almost 10 years, like giving a sound to vehicles. And in the beginning was a kind of tedious process, but we figured out a way to make it easy accessible. So the question is, how can we make every sound become drivable from a car? Because it needs to be interactive and react to parameters like speed and the load of a car or the RPM. And so, yeah, we started to develop a framework or a workstation. You can think of it like if you're into music production, maybe a digital audio workstation. That's a software you can use to record and mix your music. And we created something like a driving sound workstation. So you can throw in all kinds of sounds. Can be field recordings from a waterfall, or yourself whistling, or analog synthesizers, or whatever. And then you can easily make them interactive and drivable within a car. And yeah, I can just show you how it looks like if you're interested, or we just take the time. I think our time is good, and that's how it looks like. And you can play a virtual drive and then listen to your sound design immediately. And I give you a few examples of designs we did so far. And the first one is, I think, more or less a classical EV, how you would imagine it, a bit shiny and spaceship-like. See how the characteristic changes over load, and for the recuperation you get a different sound. We go to another example, and this is not so based on noise, but rather on musical harmonies. So there's no pitch going up and down, but rather the chords are changing. So yeah, some find it relaxing, some find it annoying over time. So that's always the question, to find something that's not annoying if you have a 10 hours ride. So one last example, it's a bit funny or ridiculous at one side, because it tries to imitate a combustion engine with a gear shift. So it's something we tried out. It was a happy accident, like this ooh, new, and people liked it because it's their listening experience. So it's something they knew, and yeah. Get even some burbles. All right.
So people are working on this, and the question is, do we like it or do we not like it? And which kind of sound do we actually like? And some people were like, oh, it sounds like a combustion engine car. Don't we want to get rid of these sounds? Isn't there a really great opportunity to make our cities sound differently? And as we know that sounds play an important role, wouldn't it be important that we have a good discussion about what is good sound in a city? And wouldn't it be important that we have people who think about how should the city sound like? Are there different areas in the city that should sound differently? Are there different expectations and needs of people in terms of sound? Should the sound of vehicles maybe sound differently when it's close to a kindergarten or close to a school or a hospital compared to a highway? And that's all questions that we probably haven't thought about, but that we could think about because the technology enables us to think about them and actually get into details about how we want the future to be like. And I think there is plenty of things to think about. And another thought we want to put to you is that we can even go further and can even think about how we can use sound as a city planning instrument. At the moment, we usually think about city planning in terms of city plans. We have layouts and we talk in a very visual way. But we usually do not talk about how do we want our city to be to look like, and we usually not even talk about cities from a different perspective. We only think about the visual perspective. And what we tried out a couple of times is we created workshops and asked people not to think about spatial layout in terms of buildings, etc., but what they want to hear and how they want a city to sound like. And they came up with totally different city layouts and totally different city structure than cities that we know at the moment. And I think it's a really interesting way to look towards the future and also to design and create our cities. And the new perspective will probably enable us to create cities that match our human needs in a better way than they did before. So let's discuss how a future could look like when we think about other senses. And if you want to see more or hear more about the project and hear it more in silence, think about what we actually came up with, we have a website where we put all our sounds on. We have also a little audiobook that you can listen to and get an idea of the sounds again, and maybe with different background noise that's a little less loud than the music that we heard at the moment. But we hope you enjoy the sounds, and our sounds make you think about the future of our cities. Thank you very much. And of course, now is the time for questions. So whoever has a question, just raise your hand and I'll be there with the microphone.
Yeah, great. Hi. So my question would be actually a question of clarification. So the sound of the cars is what you hear outside or inside the cars is personalized sound?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends is the answer. So for the outside, there is a legal requirement to 30 kmh or till 30 kmh, the AVAS, acoustic vehicle alerting system. But it's up to the manufacturers. They can even go to 100 kmh for exterior sound, and for the interior there are no regulations. So it's up to the manufacturers what you can hear as a driver.
But the sounds you heard in our simulation, that were only exterior sounds, so it was on a street level.
Thank you very much for the input, and I think it's a very powerful message. I'd be curious to know if there, in your design workshops, if you noticed a difference in age, if like somebody who's like 8 years old or 80 years old has different needs in the terms of sound. Because I'm a big fan of this 8 to 80 cities concept, you probably also know. I'm just wondering if age plays a role.
Yes, age obviously plays a big role because kids obviously like noisy environments or lively environments more than older people. Also, younger people like the sound of music and if it's a lively environment. And older people are less comfortable with this noise level. And obviously, it's not just an age question, but also a personal preferences question. Some people don't have any issues with noise or with louder music, louder sounds. Other people are really sensitive to these sounds and they would prefer it really differently. And so there is a huge variety in different needs according to age, according to different personality traits, and also according to personal situations that you're at in the moment. So, for example, if you're in a stressed situation, you're much more sensitive towards crazy sounds.
Well, thanks very much. It was really interesting. I was wondering about the baseline. I mean, what is it that we really know about how the city sounds today? Are those sounds being mapped, or is there any kind of overview you had when you designed the future?
Yeah, that's a good point. From the mentioned Murray Schaffer, he initiated the project, the World Soundscape Project, and this was one idea to collect sounds from different places from all over the world to get kind of a sonic map or a sound map. I'm not sure if this project is still running, but yeah, here and there are some really nice projects. It's a niche, but it's a niche. It is there.
And so our approach was not to answer the question universally, but just for these very few examples. And there we had the baseline that we recorded and that we tried to just replace the vehicles that we perceived there.
First of all, thank you for the demonstration. I'm wondering, in your demonstration, you replaced a single postman with a single drone. But you're also thinking about, like, in the future there might be hundreds of drones coming today. And this would be quite noisy, I think.
Yes, definitely. So what we did not take into consideration is change of mobility behavior, and we just wanted to illustrate single cases or cases that we can observe today, but not totally different mobility behavior. And thinking about a fleet of drones or a fleet of autonomous cars that might become fleets of rolling living rooms, that's a totally different story. We were also thinking about that, but in a different project.
Yes, thank you. I wonder, there is not only the material or the machines who are making noise. I wonder if probably we have different materials for the streets or for whatever trottoir or wherever we're walking and we are gathering around. So does this also make probably a difference? Can we, I mean, you showed picture where we see more plants, and so there are a lot of things probably will change, and the atmosphere and the sound probably will have an impact on the sound, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. It's many factors that will add up in the end, and we focus on mobility, but for sure the materials you're building a city with have an influence. Like you mentioned plants, these are absorbing materials in contrast to reflecting materials like glass, for example. So absorbing materials are super good, and there's this quiet asphalt that absorbs as well because of the different structure than the traditional asphalt. So yeah, there are a lot of, I would call them passive measures that we can push to make it sound better.
All right, there's room for one more question.
Yeah, please.
Just a quick one. Hi. How far is the future that we are speaking about? Because I didn't see the consideration of change of behavior, such as banning cars in the cities, for example, which is becoming quite common and probably will be the thing. And you assume that all the vehicles will be changed into electrical one, which, in my personal opinion, is not possible in the nearest future due to, I don't know, like raw materials, for instance. So how far is this future?
No, you're completely right. So what we did not want to find out is what other decisions will impact. So one is, of course, the surface and the plants, etc. The other one is changing mobility behavior. But we just wanted to illustrate how the replacement of combustion engines by electric vehicles will change the city noisescape or soundscape. And I'm totally with you in the point that we need to change our mobility behaviors, that we will probably not replace all the combustion engine cars with just electric cars, because things will not work out. But that's a completely different research question, and maybe we should come up with a project for next year.
I'm very sorry to interrupt. I'm sure there are more questions, but maybe you guys just hang around and people can come up to you and ask more questions. Thanks a lot for your talk. A big round of applause again, please.